Simple, true, radio. Simple, true, radio. Simple, true, radio. Simple, true, radio.
Hello, I'm Infinite Reality, so are you, and so is everybody else. And today, I want to go back to some of the things I've talked about in the past, particularly gold. Now, in one of the first videos I did, I talked about gold rehypothecation. And, I said a few things about that. But an article from the Sydney Morning Herald today came out, and it shows you how easily manipulated these markets are, and maybe, just maybe, there's more to it than what the Sydney Morning Herald was actually telling us. Okay, so I'll start on this article. Gold plunges after fat finger Muppet. Right, that's a it's a funny term right there. Jolts market. Right, gold sank like a stone at 9 a.m. in London after a huge spike in volume in New York futures that traders said was probably a result of a fat finger or erroneous order. Really? Okay, I'll get into this a little bit later. Trade shot up to 1.8 million ounces of gold in just a minute, a level not reached even with the surprise election of US President Donald Trump or Britain's vote to leave the European Union. Alright, no one has a clue apart from the unfortunate individual that pressed the wrong button. David Govett, head of precious metals trading at Market Spectron Group in London, said of the spike in volume. Thin activity and automated trading may exacerbate such moves, he said. Look, if you want to play around with the market, there's only two ways to do it. Sell large quantities or buy large quantities. Okay? Now, if you're buying large quantities, the simple fact is that you could be set to make a great fortune if you sit on it long enough. Right? But can you afford to sit on it long enough? Now, if you sell large quantities, you need to sell at the right time, at the right price. Okay? And let's be frank about this. What if this person that was called a fat finger Muppet, right, knows about how much tungsten's in the gold, or the manipulation of gold around the world? You know, I read out in the previous video I did about this that Germany requested their gold reserves back from the US and London. And what they found out is that the gold wasn't there. Right, so right there, if you understand that, you understand that gold is ripe to be manipulated. One way or another. If you want to drive the prices down, sell. Okay, if you want to drive the prices up, buy. Simple as that. Now, if someone's got enough money to do these trades, well, good luck to them. But of course, they're calling someone a fat-fingered Muppet. Why? We'll get into it. Others said a trader may have had a larger order than intended or underestimated the market's ability to absorb so much gold. Some 18,149 lots were traded on COMEX in just a minute before falling back to 2,334 lots an hour later. Well, if someone's idea was to manipulate the gold price, wow, they did it in spectacular fashion. Gold futures fell as much as 1.6% to US $1,236.50 an ounce. Now, if you recall the last video I did, they were speculating that the way that it's been manipulated will bring it up to $5,000 an ounce. And if someone's understanding that the gold they're buying is not gold, or not pure gold, then it would be an excellent way to play on the market. Right, 1236.50 an ounce on the COMEX, lowest for most active contract since May 17. The metal for August delivery settled at $1,246.40 an ounce at 1:37 p.m. in New York, below the 100-day moving average. The mystery plunge has the market spooked. Well, I think that was the idea of it. Because right at the moment, now is the moment to be buying gold. If you want to get into that. It's the lowest price I've seen in a long time, but someone's stuck with a hell of a lot of gold here at the moment at a very low price. So why would they do it? Well, if they keep it long enough and can afford to keep it long enough, the price is eventually going to go up. That's as simple as that. And you can make out like a bandit by doing this. If you've got enough money, of course, to do it. Right. The mysterious plunge has the market spooked, says Bob Hackerborn, a senior market strategist at RGO Futures. This bears the hallmarks of a fat finger Muppet. Right, yeah, someone that's made a mistake on the keyboard. A trade of 18,149 ounces would be a very typical trade, but the trade of 18,149 lots of futures contract, which is 100 times bigger, would not be. Look, it might very well be a mistake, but it could be a very profitable mistake. Ross Norman, Chief Executive Officer of Sharps Pixley, a London-based precious metals dealer, said in a note. It leaves us wondering if a junior had got confused between ounces and lots, Norman said. Well, I'll tell you what, if it is a mistake, it's a bloody big one. Big one. If a trader has made the mistake on a keyboard and it's cost you, the trader that wanted to actually make the trade, wow, that's a big story right there. Big story. Because you as the trader are liable as well as the person that's buying it. Some speculated that the sell-off may have been prompted by technical concerns. Well, which technical concerns are these? Well, a slip of the button? Pressed enter at the wrong time? Filled out a box wrong? What technical concerns are we talking about here? Of course, the Sydney Morning Herald won't go any further into that because, they're not real journalists. But, let's continue. Gold's failure at the $12.55 US resistance level may have triggered a technical sell, and with limited participation, the size of the sell order pushed gold down to the next support level, Peter Hugg, Marketing Director of Kitco Metals, said in note to clients. Right, and notice how all these talking heads are trying to explain it to their clients what's happening, when in reality they've got no fucking idea. None, absolutely none whatsoever. Bullion paired losses after the report showed US orders for business equipment unexpectedly declined. Whoa, see, this sort of talk points to me that somebody knows something that others don't. You know, maybe like rehypothecation's going to be exposed big time, and they're getting in their orders for the gold now while the going's good. Who knows? Who knows? I could be wrong on this. Could be 100% right on this. It's just speculation, but I found this article pretty interesting. Rising use of computer-driven algorithmic trading has often been blamed for extraordinary movements in financial markets, known as flash crashes in recent years. Right, well, it sort of begs the question as to why they're using this sort of system. If a bit of panic in the market because someone did something with a slip of the button could affect everybody. And this is why I said in my last video, it's a fool's errand to play the stock market in any way, shape or form. Why? Because things like this happen. You know, it's all backed on confidence, and if something happens that's out of the ordinary, people are grasping for an idea as to what's actually happened, and none of them have an idea. They're left in the dark. Right? This is how you can corner markets. All you need to do is basically have some sort of idea or information that others don't. And seen by this article, it could be achieved by a slip of the button with a fat finger muppet. What a joke. What a joke. These moves are going to become more widespread with the way things are going, Govett said by email. The more they happen, the worse they will become as people back away from holding positions. Yeah, well, they're going to back away from holding positions because they realise that some dickhead coming in, pushing the wrong button, can cost them friggin' millions. You know, why would you play that game? There are also signs of falling demand for gold as China, the largest consumer, bought less from Hong Kong in May. Yeah, China seems to be the driver of a lot of this stuff around the world, doesn't it? Purchases fell to a net 44.8 tonnes from 74.9 tonnes in April, according to the data from the Hong Kong Census and Statistics Department compiled by Bloomberg. Well, you know, if they can do this with gold, they can do it with silver, they can do it with iron ore, they can do it with any metal, they can do it with bloody frozen concentrated orange juice, if they wanted to, having a nod to the movie Trading Places. And it's simple as that. Simple as that. Right, now I'm going to be moving on to another topic here. The census results have come in for Australia. And the ABC News has a article here called "Census Results: Australians are older, ethnically diverse, and losing their religion." Well, thank God for that. Hey? Thank God for that. Australia is older, more ethnically diverse, and less religious than ever before, according to the 2016 census results released today. It was dubbed Census Fail after multiple website outages left millions unable to complete their forms online. But despite the difficulties, 95.1% of Australians completed the survey. An independent panel has declared the data fit for use. Well, I didn't bother. I never bother with bloody censuses. Why? Because it just tells them, it tells the government everything they need to control you. Everything. How many people are living in your house, the way you live, mean incomes. You know, do we really need to be giving government these types of information? And look, that they use the excuse that we use this information to build better infrastructure for the future. But that's absolute bullshit. And I'll give you an example. In this country, we have things called, well, pretty much every country you'll find these people. They're called town planners, right? And how many times has a road been built or a hospital been built that once it's finished, they find that it's totally inadequate for the use that they first designed it for? Now, I've got personal experience in this. I did my second year of my apprenticeship at a company that worked exclusively for public works. And one of our first jobs in that company that I did with them was basically working in hospitals. And the first job was at a place called Cumberland Hospital, where they had underestimated the amount of mentally ill people walking around, and they needed, honestly, a massive building. This thing was 70, 80 meters long, and, you know, it had, I think, 40, 50 rooms, and they ended up having 2 people to a room. You know, and they realised early on that that building wasn't going to be sufficient to take care of the people that were suffering that way. My second job with that company was at the Children's Hospital at Westmead. And we had to rebuild. I'll sort of go a bit more into this. The Children's Hospital at Westmead at the time was a brand new building. Brand new. It had been open less than a year. Okay? And we were already in there less than a year after it had been built, because their day surgery was not big enough by far. And we had to build on and extend onto that, the existing day surgery units. We ended up adding 60 more beds with all the facilities that go with it, the gas, everything that's pumped to it. And I looked at it and I've gone, this is crazy. How could you be building on to a brand new building in the first place? So you tell me, what kind of good does a census actually do if they're not utilizing it in the right way? Well, or The better question you should be asking is, what way do they utilize a census? But let's go on. Here's a snapshot of 2008 of Australia in 2016. The average Australian, female, 38 years old, born in Australia, speaks English, married, living in a capital city, earning $662 a week. Right. What do you want me to say about that? I'm not female for a start. I'm older than 38. I was born in Australia. I do speak English. I'm not married. I'm not living in a capital city. I'm living on the outskirts of a capital city. And I'm certainly not earning $662 a week. But that's just me. That's one person. Because what they're looking for is the average Australian. Hey? They don't give two stuffs about people that fall outside those categories. Let's continue. Losing our religion. Not religious anymore? Mark dash no religion on the 2016 census. Wonder how many dashes were out there. Anyway, Australians are ditching religion in unprecedented numbers. I wonder why. Would it have to be something to do with these things coming out of a book that was, written 1700 years ago in the Council of Nicaea, or in other religions that they were written 1400 years ago by a crazy man? I don't know. Or maybe, even still, why they're ditching religion is because they can see the amount of shit that it creates in the world. The amount of terrorists that it creates. The amount of disharmony it creates in a real society. I don't know. Or maybe they just realise that children's toys, once you're not a child anymore, belong in the bin. Who knows? But to me, these are good numbers. I'd like to see more of it. And I'm not knocking anyone that wants to believe in a god or a spiritual being. Far from it. I'm actually quite spiritual, but I'm not religious. I don't need any sort of religion to tell me what to believe or how to believe it. I can make up my own mind on those issues, thank you very much. And I think a lot of people in Australia are coming to the similar conclusions. Really are. But anyway, while Australians are turning away from the Christian religions, there's been a massive growth in Hinduism, Buddhism and Islam. There's the numbers right there. In 91, 0.3%, 2016, 1.9%, of an increase of 533% for Hinduism. Look, I've got no problem with Hindus. They're pretty peaceful people. On the whole, very peaceful people. Same with Buddhism. I suppose this is why a lot of people have taken it up. 1991, 0.8% to 2016, 2.4% for a 200% increase. And Islam, 0.9% in 1991 to 2.6% in 2016, which is 160%. Well, who knows? You can't convince everyone that religions belong in the bin. So, if your religion's not working for you, you shop around, don't you? You find something that does actually agree with you. For those who have come across the seas, about half of Australians were born overseas, or at least had one parent born overseas. Well, that includes me. My mother was born in Scotland. She came out here as a 10-pound pom in the 60s, early 60s, and made quite a good life for herself, and so did a whole family. You know, I got no problems with migrants at all, as long as you want to come over here and be part of it, and not be excluded from it, or live in your own separate little enclaves. I've got no problem with that at all. About 1 million Australians were born in China or India, and these two countries are the biggest sources of migration to Australia. Yeah. Well, fair enough. No problem with that. Top 5 countries of birth other than Australia: England, New Zealand, China, India, Philippines. These top 5 countries account for about half of the migrants coming to Australia. England and New Zealand are still the most popular countries of birth, but there's no real growth in migrants from these two countries. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because it's about 10 times harder if you coming from England or pretty much any of these European countries, you'll find it 10 times harder to actually get into Australia as a citizen rather than people from Asia, like China and India, as they say. I have a distant relative that he wanted to move to Australia, and the only way that he found that he could do it is by moving to New Zealand first, becoming a citizen of New Zealand, and then moving to Australia. Wow. You know, why are we making it so hard for people of our own heritage to come into this country, but we make it so easy for others? Doesn't seem quite fair, does it? Anyway, let's move on. English is still the main language for 3/4 of Australians, but there are 301 other different languages spoken in homes across the country. Yeah, well, I've got no problem with what you speak at home, but I do have a problem if you're going to start a business and interact with other people that speak English. I want you to speak English. You know, I've gone to plenty of shops in the past where while they're serving you, they'll speak in their own language. And let me tell you, I'm the first one to say, excuse me, while you're around me, please speak English. I've got no problem with where you came from, what you do, who you are. But the simple fact is, while I'm around here, I'd like you to speak English, because you could be talking about me and I have no clue whatsoever as to whether you are or not. It's simple courtesy. Simple courtesy. Okay? You don't like that? Well, stiff shit, really. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. There was a significant jump in the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people counted in the census. Wonder why? Maybe they went out into all these communities and filled out the forms for them. Now, I'm not being racist here, but I've gone to many country towns before, and a lot of them just couldn't give a fuck about filling out something like this. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and I've got a lot of respect for Aboriginal people, especially the ones that live on the land which I've met and live with, actually. But I'm just telling you a bit of truth here. Most Aboriginal people couldn't give a stuff what the government's trying to do for them. Don't care. Well, shit, I barely care. So I don't blame them in that aspect at all. Anyway, moving on. Counted is the operative word. The number of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people isn't necessarily increasing, but a concerted effort to reach people means 2.8% of Australians are now identified as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders. This jumps to 25% in the Northern Territory. Well, it just backs up what I just said, didn't it? Really? So they've just been counted. They haven't actually filled out anything. They've just been counted. Wonder who did that. We're not a young country. We have a serious case of middle age. 1 in 6 Australians are over the age of 65. Most of the growth in younger age groups is driven by migration from Asia. Well, geez, you're not telling me anything I don't know here. Seriously. There you go. I wonder if we're living any longer. Doesn't look like it. Anyway. Melbourne versus Sydney. Oh, of course, because, we always want to go down that route. Australia's affinity with the bush has been regulated to ballads and books. 2/3 of us live in the capital cities, and population growth is a concrete jungle is twice as fast as the rest of the country. Geez, I'm sorry, people. I need a set of glasses. My child stepped on my glasses when he was about 4 years old. He's now 11, but in the meantime, my eyes have gotten worse and worse. So I have great trouble reading something this small these days. I am going to the optometrist. It's coming up, but I still need to sort of save up some money because, I don't really have $600 to throw around on a pair of glasses. That's what it costs these days. So please bear with me. Melbourne is still slightly smaller than Sydney, but it's growing fast and will catch up soon. Fastest growing cities: Darwin, Perth and Melbourne. Right. Most of the city's growth has been driven by migration. Yeah, of course. Let's not have any consideration of how much water is in this country and how many people can actually be sustained in Australia. Because, I thought this is what the census was all about, to find out about all these things. But you never hear about that part. Never ever hear about that part. Town planners, if you went to your local council and talked about talked to the town planner and asked him how many people can this area sustain, he'll give you a direct answer. He or she will know. But it seems our governments don't know. Anyhow, let's move on. That's another issue. Most of the city's growth has been driven by 86% of migrants to Australia in the past 25 years has settled in the capitals. Yeah, of course, because they don't want to go out bush like I do. I yearn to go out bush. Really do. But I just don't have the money to do it. The bush capital ACT is the fastest growing state or territory, while Tasmania or South Australia are stagnating. The big bucks, state by state. The median weekly income in Australia is $662. Let me tell you, that doesn't get you far. Not at all. With all these costs of living in a city these days, $662 gets you bloody nowhere. If you're a person that doesn't know how to budget, I tell you what, you're in the shit. That includes wages, but also benefits paid by the government. Median weekly income, $998 in the ACT. Well, isn't that funny? Just where, Parliament House is and all these government workers, they like to pay themselves far more than the rest of the country. Next, surprisingly, is Northern Territory. Yeah, of course, because, and I'll tell you why here. There's a lot of specialist jobs up there. Rounding up cattle, driving trucks, things that you wouldn't, flying airplanes, helicopters, okay? And this stuff's used a lot up there, and you have to pay accordingly. Yeah, Western Australia, 724, you're talking to mining, there's another one in the Northern Territory and Western Australia. You got to pay big bucks for these type of people. And of course, Queensland 660, New South Wales 664, probably the most expensive state in Australia to live. And the median weekly income is 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth on the list. Well done. Well done, government. Well done. Okay, Victoria 644, South Australia 600, and Tasmania 573. Yeah. If you pay more than 1/3 of your income on rent or mortgage, you are considered financially stressed. Well, welcome to Sydney. Welcome to Sydney. Nearly a quarter of people in Sydney are in this category. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Brisbane residents are expecting rent stress. Mortgage stress is particularly high in Perth, Sydney and Melbourne. Yeah, I wonder why. Might it have something to do with the amount that they are charging for properties these days in these cities? I'll give you an example. The house I'm in now, I'm living with my dad. My dad's pretty sick, and I've moved in with my dad to look after him. I have done for a couple of years now. Right, and when they bought this house in 1989, they bought it for $108,000. Okay? Now, it's worth $650,000. How does that happen in that space of time? If anyone can explain that one to me, I'm more than willing to listen. More than willing. Because, to be honest, it's not worth that. And imagine if and I live on the outskirts of Sydney, right? I've got a mountain next to me. You can't get any further out. Right? So what happens if you're living in inner city? What do you reckon you're paying for a house? And more to the point, what do you think it's really worth? These are the questions that no one tends to get answered in this country. Right, big increase in same-sex couples. Diversity of Australia's 6.1 million families is captured in the census. Record number of same-sex couples, nearly 47,000, counted in the census. Number of male and female same-sex couples is roughly equal, but female couples are five times as likely to have children. Well, I wonder how that happens. I wonder how that happens. Turkey baster, maybe? Don't think so. Anyhow, I'm not going to cast aspersions on that because I don't care who you sleep with. I got no problem with any of that. It's got nothing to do with me. And guess what? It's got absolutely nothing to do with the fucking census either. Absolutely nothing. About 2 million Australians live alone, and mostly it's older women. Ha 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 ha! I wonder why that is. Have they hounded their husbands to death? Or have they been these politically correct high-class business women that sacrifice their life for their job? Or are they just out-and-out feminists that are man-hating? Who knows? But 2 million, that's a bloody big number right there. Okay, who does the heavy lifting? Australians are still a generous bunch, caring for others, volunteering and doing unpaid domestic work. But it's women who do the heavy lifting. 1 in 5 men say that they do 0 hours of unpaid domestic work each week, while about 12% of women say they do more than 30 hours. Holy shit. I can't say that's right or wrong. It may very well be right, but let me tell you something. That's not my situation. I do quite a fair bit around the house. One of the things I love to do is cook. Do quite a fair bit. So I clean. I look after our child. I get him off to school. Look after him when he gets home. Wow. Grandparents are providing childcare for their grandchildren, and 2.1 million Australians are unpaid carers for relatives or friends. Yeah, I wonder why that they have to be unpaid. Would it have something to do with further up the page on how many the average wage, and how many people are under stress because they might decide that they want to buy a home that they really can't afford? I tell ya, there's a hell of a lot wrong with this country. So, I came across another article here on the census, and it's home ownership declining as percentage of renters increases in latest Census 2016 results. Alright. The dream of home ownership is slipping away for many Australians as the latest census results highlight the increasing number of renters. The results released today show the trend towards renting rather than owning continued, with nationwide figures showing a slight change. Australians who own their own home outright declined from 32.1% in 2011 to 31% in the last 25 years. This has declined by more than 10%. Well, let me tell you, there's a reason for that. A big reason. Because in the last 25 years, house prices have skyrocketed. Absolutely skyrocketed. It's become so ridiculous that it prices most first home buyers out of the market altogether. The only people that are buying houses these days are professionals. Whether that be accountants, doctors, lawyers, you name it, engineers. The only people that can afford to buy homes these days. Your average worker cannot afford to buy a home at all. This is why they rent. And let me tell you, renting's becoming a struggle too, because the amount of people that do get into the home market and then decide to buy a second home and rent it out is staggering, right? It's called negative gearing, if you ever want to know about it. And what they do is they force these renters to actually pay a fair chunk of that mortgage of the second home off for them. I think it's a ridiculous thing. Germany has it right. You know, they've curtailed things like this happening. You know, so that people can actually afford to buy their own home. Anyway, those still paying off mortgage also decreased slightly from 34.9% to 34.5%. In contrast, those renting increased slightly from 29.6% to 30.9% in 2016. In more bad news for renters, they are also forking out more, with the median household weekly rent jumping up from $285 to $335 a week. Yeah, wow. That's crazy money. You know, and it's going nowhere but into somebody else's pocket, usually the banks. The percentage of households who are now paying more than 30% of their income in rent has also increased, rising from 10.4% to 11.5%. But there was good news for mortgage holders. Oh, absolutely. Excellent news for mortgage holders. They love this shit. With the median mortgage repayment dropping from $1,800 in 2011 to $1,755. Wow. Who gives a shit, really? The only winner here is the banks, and they've slightly lost. What have they lost? $45. Really? Okay, home ownership versus renting in Australia. The results also varied across states and territories. New South Wales, Victoria, Northern Territory and ACT showed bigger declines in home ownership, while the percentage of ownership actually increased in Western Australia. Yeah, because it's probably the last bastion, Western Australia, to be able to afford a home. You know, I'll tell you what, I don't want to be moving over the other side of the country away from my family just to be able to buy a home. You know, really. Australia's most western state also bucked the trend when it came to renting. It was the only one to show a decrease in renters. Victoria showed the biggest increase in this. First Home Buyers Australia director Taj Singh told news.com.au it was no surprise to see those states with declining home ownership, considering the median house prices in New South Wales and Victoria. Yeah, it's the biggest problem. And the big problem is, I said, you're paying $1 million plus for a house these days that isn't worth it. It isn't just not worth it in any way, shape, or form. I don't care what you think. You know, there's no way that a bloody 3-bedroom home is worth $1 million plus. It's just not. Okay, the new state policies to abolish and provide concessions for stamp duty will help first-home buyers. Well, how? How? What, because they don't have to come up with $40,000 in fees to pay to the government? You're still paying $1 million for a friggin' home that doesn't anywhere near come to the price of what you're actually paying. So how does it help? Oh, you're just taking a little bit off the top. Anyway, however, only those look to buy entry-level apartments and homes, as some of the prices of these are even out of the first home buyer's reach. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, as I said earlier in this video, my dad's sick, and when he dies, we've got to sell this home, and I've got to split it 3 ways. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I've got a child that's still in school. I've got to stick around because he needs specialist help in this city, right? What I'd prefer to do is go out bush and buy somewhere, buy a nice little property, 5 acre property with something on it that I could afford. That's what I'd like to do, but I can't actually do that. So, what do? You've only got one other option, is to rent. And as we already previously mentioned, renting is becoming more and more expensive, and I've sort of elucidated to the reasons why. Okay. The new state policies will help first-time buyers. However, only those looking to buy entry-level homes, blah, blah, blah. In contrast, Western Australia was dealing with the cooling property market at the end of the mining boom, has led to many job losses. Yeah, well, I talked about that in another video, and why that is, and what should really be going on with the mining industry, but of course, a common sense approach to any of this, it's non-existent in this country. In areas where property prices were still increasing, Mr. Singh said the government should consider a New Zealand-like policy where investors were forced to save a larger deposit or to have a significant equity in order to get a loan. Oh, are you kidding? That just leaves even more people out in the cold. It really does. Now, do you want to start work at, say, you come out of school in year 12 and you might get your first job at 19, and you want to be saving for 10 or 12 years in order to be able to afford a deposit for a loan for your house? This is crazy talk. It really is. I can see all this going up in smoke one day. It really will. The way that they've structured the loan markets in Australia, and the property prices in particular, are absolutely staggeringly stupid. It's unsustainable in any way, shape, or form. And they'll find out one day. They'll find out one day. I don't know who's propping it up at the moment, but they'll find out. While the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, APRA, right, well, I'm a musician and APRA means another thing to me, but never mind, did order banks to restrict lending on interest-only loans this year. Yeah, well, what do you want me to say about that? It's a good thing, to be honest, because I'll tell you, if the housing bubble burst, these interest-only loans people, they'll be the first to go. They'll be the first to hand in their tickets and say, "Oh, I'm broke, I can't afford it," and they'll be done. Mr. Singh said more needed to be done as interest rates remained at historic lows, meaning loans were still affordable for investors. Well, see, this is a big problem. This is where a lot of people are getting into the house market and they don't really know what's going on, because I remember a time when interest rates were at historic highs. And guess what happened? A lot of people lost everything because they just couldn't afford to pay the interest. They couldn't afford it. It's not as though wages go up in relation to this stuff. Not at all. Mr. Singh said the optimal way to increase home ownership was to restrict investor demand. Yeah, well, the investor's the one that's killing everyone because they're greedy. They're absolutely greedy, right? They don't want one house. They want 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 10. And it's killing it for everybody else. The federal government really needs to address, though, the scaling back negative gearing and adjusting the generous CGT concessions for investors, he said. Yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely. I've been saying this for years. The negative gearing is killing the industry out and out, and it's pricing people that actually can afford to buy a home out of the market altogether. And then I'm not talking about a home in a rich area here. I'm talking just an average 3-bedroom dog box. Seriously. And that's all a lot of people want. Something with a backyard for their children to grow up in. Something close to a school. It's not much. But if you can't afford it, where do you go? Right. Results of the 2016 census released today show a changing Australia. No, I'm not going back into this. Already commented on that earlier on in the video. But yeah, that first bit was very interesting because it just shows you that some of the problems we have here, and the census highlights it, are big problems. And to be honest, they don't have any idea how to solve this. They don't. And meanwhile, they keep bringing in more and more people who compete in a market just to buy a home. Now, when your average Australian that has been born here and lived here all their life, probably second, third generation, whatnot, can't afford to buy their own home, why the hell are we bringing in anybody else? Simple question. There's no racist overtones here. It's just, I think that some things need to be talked about are what best for the people living here now, rather than the people that you might be wanting to bring in. Government doesn't talk about this sort of stuff. I do. This is why I'm making a video. Anyway, it's the end of my video. Thanks for listening. Subscribe if you like. If not, whatever. Cheers.